In January 2021, Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition saw one of its longest standing speedrunning barriers finally broken. The runner CapitaineToinon managed to kill Gwyn with the use of the Force Quit Wrong Warp in under 20 minutes for the first time, a feat which had been worked towards relentlessly for a decade.
Jesus Christ!
To celebrate this historic accomplishment and allow you to fully appreciate the magnitude of the new record, I decided to put together an overview of the any % Force Quit category starting from the very beginning, explain what Force Quit actually entails, track its turbulent development through time, and highlight the key figures who shaped what it has become today. Strap yourselves in, as this is a tale of the 10-year-long journey that led to Dark Souls being beaten in under 20 minutes. In hotly contested speedruns, it is common for new world records to be quite scarce, as numerous runners attempting to break the record at the same time leads to a swifter process of time optimization, making it that much harder to best the standing world's best. This progression might even get to the point where a new world record is set only thanks to a new discovery, reigniting this cycle of improvement. Dark Souls 1 tends to be an exception to this rule. The game is undoubtedly a popular speedrun, amassing nearly 2,000 full runs on the leaderboards for the original and remastered versions combined, by close to 500 individual players. However, new barriers are being broken through quite often. I attribute this fact to two things. First, Dark Souls offers broad variety in its speedrunning categories. Besides having 4 major ones, it also gives the players opportunities to compete in the minor or less traditional ones. Categories such as all achievements, the Soul Level 1 categories where any character leveling is prohibited, or the New Game Plus categories have generated great interest over the years and allow for new world records to be set quite regularly. The second reason is the unmatched flux the game has been in during its entire existence. New strategies are being discovered and further developed almost constantly, allowing the speedrunners to shave off precious seconds and on the odd occasions, even minutes. Due to the game's amazing Zelda-like structure and a widespread array of weapons and other tools, singular discoveries often reshape the entire route being used for a specific category, giving birth to a completely new style of a run. Because of these aspects, world records in the Dark Souls community tend to be way more downplayed than in other, similarly popular speedruns, and the players often focus on the time losses and potential future improvements, rather than ravishing in the glory of their newest accomplishment.
It's so bad, dude. It's so bad. It's so bad.
That being said, sometimes there comes a world record so groundbreaking and unexpected that even the most perfectionist runner acknowledges its greatness.
What the fuck just happened? What the fuck just happened? Oh my god.
At the beginning of 2021, such a record was achieved, and one of the most optimized times in Dark Souls history was set, breaking the 4.5-year lasting 20-minute barrier in the any % Force Quit category. But what even is Force Quit? And why is it a distinct category at all? Back in the early days of Dark Souls speedrunning, the players would complete the game more or less as intended by the developers. In order to open the sealed gate in Firelink Altar and reach the game's final area, the Kiln of the First Flame, 4 Lord Souls must be collected and offered to the Lord Vessel. These 4 Lords consist of the Bed of Chaos, located in Lost Izalith, the Grave Lord Nito in Nito's Domain, the 4 Kings in New Londo Ruins, and Seath the Scaleless, hidden within the depths of crystal caves behind the Duke's archives. The Lords can be fought within the same part of the game's progression, and as such there is no set order of killing these mandatory bosses. However, except for the 4 Kings, each of their respective arenas is locked behind the Golden Fog Gate, and the only way to dissipate these fog walls is to obtain the Lord Vessel and place it upon the Firelink Altar. This raises 2 further requirements for the players to complete before collecting the Lord Souls, which are gaining access to the initially closed Firelink Altar and finding the Lord Vessel. Of course, there are also other bosses in the way who must be defeated when attempting to reach these goals and each respective lord. The Lord Vessel is acquired from Guinevere in the back of the Analondo Cathedral, just behind the notorious Ornstein and Smough fight. While entering the Firelink altar can be done in two ways. Either ringing both the upper and lower bells of awakening, and using the newly opened pit in the Firelink shrine, or beating the Four Kings early and making the Primordial Serpent Cath transport you there. Keep in mind, it is only possible to enter the Firelink altar while already in possession of the Lord Vessel. This will be important for later. Ringing the bells is nevertheless required for opening the Sen's Fortress and entering Analondo, and as such, runners would typically not bother with Cath at all. On the 15th of October 2011, just 3 weeks after the game's release, a Japanese speedrunner Twilight finished the run in time of 1 hour, 22 minutes and 25 seconds in-game time. From today's perspective, the run might seem peculiar routing-wise, but the sheer skill displayed just 3 weeks from the game's release is remarkable. Twilight started the run playing as Pyromancer and utilized two main damage sources, various Pyromancies and the Drake Sword, an early game weapon with good base damage but no scaling, making the drop off hard during the latter parts of the game. He also chose the Master Key as a starting gift item, granting him early access to several shortcuts. After killing Oscar, which is actually around 2 seconds slower compared to exhausting his dialogue, the first objective was acquiring the Homeward Bones and Firelink Shrine, so that he would not lose souls and humanities upon warp packs compared to just using the Dark Sign. Some of the early stages of the run might seem familiar to today's viewers. Twilight obtained the early Gold Pine Resin in Underberg, and already used the jump to bypass the rolling barrel on the stairs to Taurus Demon, a strategy used ever since. While waiting for the Hellkite Drake to drop down, several picked up souls were used to minimize this time loss. Then the tail was cut, and the Drake Sword was obtained. Once again, a strategy which is common even in today's runs, albeit with more optimization. After killing the gargoyles and ringing the upper bell, Lothric was kicked off Firelink, and a save and quit was utilized, showing the early knowledge of the advantages provided by this feature. Here, it allowed Twilight to collect Lothric's loot without having to re-enter the area. The run then proceeded through Blighttown backwards using the Master Key with relatively casual strategies, but it is worth noting that no extra enemies were being killed. Finally, a summon was used for Prologue, because the Drake Sword alone does not deal great damage to this boss. Afterwards, the bell was rung, and the Daughter of Chaos bonfire was rested at. This meant ascending back through Blighttown would be necessary, as there is no way to warp out of it without the Lord Vessel. Twilight also used a special way of killing the Ceaseless Discharge, making him drop off the platform, showing how much was already known about the game this early on. Before traveling to Analondo, the Stone Armor set was picked up for tanking hits in certain boss fights, and Sif was killed. It seems that on Iron Golem, Twilight was aware of the option of making the Golem fall, but its setup did not work this time. Upon reaching the Analondo Cathedral, long way around its insides was taken, and Ornstein was killed first in the ONS boss fight, as Super Smough is much more manageable in phase 2 of the fight. After placing the Lord Vessel, Twilight chose to go kill Seath first, and used the Ring of Sacrifice he had picked up earlier to keep his humanities after a scripted death during the first encounter. Swiftly getting through the prison section, Seath was killed, although the clams caused a little bit of havoc, forcing Twilight to once again save and quit during the fight. Navigating through the Tomb of the Giants was masterful, and Nito was relatively easy due to the usage of the aforementioned stone armor and the poise it provides. Wearing the stone armor during the Nito boss fight is a strategy commonly used even in today's runs. Next up was the Four Kings boss fight, but the New Londo runes needed to be unsealed first, which Twilight managed to do quickly, not getting slowed down by the ghosts one bit. He also picked up the composite bow in the process. Once again, the stone armor was worn for the fight, and the DPS from pyromancies was enough to kill each king before another one spawned. Last step was coming back to Lost Izalith. Twilight opened the Bed of Chaos shortcut by offering 30 humanities to the Fair Lady, the sole reason why he had been collecting them throughout the entire run. This allows him to skip fighting 2 extra bosses on the way to the Last Lord, but also took a while as humanities need to be offered one by one. Bed of Chaos is notorious for being extra gimmicky, but this run already shows the first strategies how to deal with it. In order to reach the bug under the Bed of Chaos tree and finish the boss fight, 2 beams first need to be broken. Twilight broke the one on the right first, and then saved and quit, and re-entered the fight to not have to run all the way around to the left from the right beam. He then cleverly used the bow he had picked up, and from a blind spot shot the second beam enough times to destroy it. After dealing with some attacks of the boss, he reached the bug and quickly finished the fight. Afterwards, all that was left was warping to Firelink Shrine, entering the Firelink altar, and opening the Kiln's Gate. Multiple parry and riposts were used on Gwyn, along with some pyromancy casts. Upon leaving Gwyn's arena, the run was finished under an impressive hour and a half. Although there were clearly sections which could use improving, such as the Taurus boss fight where the plank strategy was used instead of fighting him head on, or the forever taken ascension through Blighttown, or the amount of safety strategies used such as picking up the Ring of Steel protection in Sen's Fortress, this run, just 3 weeks after the game's release, was still incredibly impressive. Twilight knew exactly what he was going to do and how, and the skill at this play was remarkable. Not many extra enemies were killed, the world was navigated swiftly, and to top it all off, the entire run was performed without a single death. A true testament to Twilight's abilities this early on. Although maybe it should have been expected considering that Twilight had been the most prolific speedrunner of Demon Souls at that time. With the game being so young, it didn't take long and less than a month of this world record, a huge glitch allowing for a massive sequence break was discovered. The Force-Quit Wrong Warp. There are 3 major ways in which a player may be warped by the game. Through the warp feature of a bonfire, using an item or casting a spell which brings them to their last bonfire, or dying. A wrong warp glitch allows the runners to manipulate the original intended destination and change it for another. The destination after the glitch had been performed will usually be something called the default position, which is an arbitrary point set by the developers, presumably intended as a failsafe location. The glitch is performed during a loading screen after triggering a warp by item or death. It does not work if using the bonfire to warp, and then, as the name Force Quit suggests, quitting out of the game completely using the respective console's home menus. Dark Souls released on both the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, but there was no real difference between the versions, so the glitch worked flawlessly on either one, and on top of that, no particular timing of quitting the game was needed, as long as it happened during the warp. If done correctly, the game would lose track of the player's exact last position within an area, and upon reloading the save file, put the chosen undead to the default coordinates for that specific area. The usefulness of this glitch and the time saves it creates are thus determined by where the default coordinates for each location are set. An area can sometimes also include 2 differently named regions of the game, instead of only one. For example, Valley of Drakes and New Londo Ruins are considered only one area. The same holds true for Darkroot Basing and Darkroot Garden, and also several others. As such, these regions share a single default location where the player can spawn in using the wrong warp. Most notably, however, the same principle applies to the regions of Firelink Altar and Kiln of the First Flame. if only the default position was set in the latter. And it is! It's on the bottom of the stairs behind the locked gate. This massive discovery meant a complete overhaul and simplification of the required progression through Lord Run. Gone was the necessity of spending colossal amounts of time acquiring the Lord Souls. No longer did the runners need to unseal the New Londo runes and slay the 4 kings, visit the Duke's archives and run through the crystal caves to kill Seath, navigate through darkness before Nito's domain, or confront the blinding lava of Lost Izalith and collect a soul possessed by Bit of Chaos. All of that could now be skipped, and the only requirement for reaching Gwyn was entering Firelink Altar and performing the Wrong Warp, shortening the run significantly. And because, as mentioned earlier, the only way to enter Firelink Altar is with the Lord Vessel in hand, the runners now needed to ring both Bells of Awakening, similarly as before, proceed to Anor Londo, beat Ornstein and Smoke to get the Lord Vessel, and kill Gwyn, skipping the entire intended late game part. It did not take long until Twilight obliterated his original run. Compared to the record without Force Quit, no early homeward bones were picked up, as enough are acquired through killing bosses and keeping humanities was no longer needed. Taurus Demon was fought straight on, without the use of planche strats. All the Sambro fans must have been disappointed, as Solaire was killed, primarily for his shield. That's pretty messed up if I'm being honest. The Drake Sword was obtained in a similar fashion, but the Gargoyles were fought with the Pyromancer's hand axe and the resin, followed by ringing the bell. Descending through Blighttown was quicker in this run due to some more optimized pathing, but Mildred was still summoned for the Quelaag fight. After ringing the second bell and visiting the Fair Lady, Twilight purchased pyromancies from Quelana and then used the homeward bone back to Firelink Shrine, as he did not rest at the Daughter of Chaos bonfire this time around. That was a huge time save over having to go through Blighttown twice, once down, once up. The next destination was Sen's Fortress, as killing Sif was no longer required. Twilight cut the Ring of Steel protection and went straight for Iron Golem. This time he managed to get the Golem to fall off the bridge. Although the setup looked a bit sketchy, it got the job done. Still, bunch of extra vitality was leveled up for safety once more, but this time there was no stone armor, so the Ornstein and Smoke fight was going to be much trickier. This run is also the first time we see the Cathedral spiral staircase jump, making the path to ONS much shorter. Instead of talking to Guinevere, Drakesword's special attack was used to kill her and obtain the vessel quicker. With the Lord Vessel acquired, both requirements of progression were met, and Twilight headed straight to Firelink Altar. Jumped off the platform to get death warped, and quit the game using the PlayStation's interface. Upon reloading, the only task left was killing Gwyn, which took a while due to the lack of damage from Twilight's equipment. After lighting the bonfire, Dark Souls was just beaten in under 35 minutes of in-game time, a feat that is even under today's standards unimaginable for most of the casual player base. Speedrunning communities in 2011 were not as organized as they are today. No centralized leaderboards existed, and the main hub for communication were the Speed Demos archive forums. Even before a discussion about splitting the Force Quit runs into separate categories sparked in early 2012, runners were already treating the then called Kiln Skip as a separate run, and continued to run with and without it. This original version of the Force Quit Wrong Warp ended up getting patched in the game's 1.06 update, and as such the only way to have it available was owning the original disc of the console version. All the more reason to separate Force Quit from the regular any % category. Another huge argument was that the glitch is effectively a save file manipulation using functionality outside of the game, which is often within a grey area in terms of speedrunning definitions. Let me quote a statement from the SpeedSouls wiki. Force quitting also has the possibility of undoing progress and the in-game time spent on the progress by simply force closing the game during regular gameplay before the game has time to save that progress. This allows for retrying sections of the game and fixing mistakes, such as dying, without any real penalty, effectively turning the run into a segmented run. As a result, force quitting is generally not allowed in real-time speedruns of the game timed via in-game time. This is how the any % force quit category came to existence, next to the regular any % category, and also the quite easily defined all bosses category, where even all of the optional bosses need to be defeated. Any % was later split into any % and any % no wrong warp in 2017, but that is a topic for another time. As the force quit wrong warp cuts substantial amounts of the game's content and makes the runners rely more heavily on good luck, the world records were not as contested as within the other categories. The general progression of the run remained the same, but Twilight's successors opted to use the Bandit starting class for its shield and later picked up the Crystal Halberd in Analondo as their main weapon of choice. The speedrunner Thanatos managed to eventually beat the 30-minute barrier with these strategies. Unfortunately, the video for that run is unavailable, but at least a VOD of one of his older records exists. Some other smaller optimizations were also introduced. Thanatos visited the Undead Merchants to purchase Lloyd's talismans and throwing knives. The knives were then used to bait the Hellkite Drake down on the bridge instead of having to kick down the ladder and waiting it out. No Mildred summon was used for Prologue, and due to the lack of pyromancies in this run, a homeward bone was used directly after ringing the second bell. The Lloyd's talisman was used to put a mimic in Sense Fortress to sleep, since the lightning spear needed to be acquired as replacement for pyromancies during the Iron Golem fight. The previously mentioned Crystal Halberd was then used for ONS, but surprisingly enough, Thanatos decided to kill Smo first and deal with Super Ornstein in Phase 2. Another throwing knife replaced the Drake Sword R2 on Guinevere. He also picked up the Black Knight armor set in the kiln to wear during the Gwyn fight, and killed him with repeated riposts, entering the final cutscene at a time of 32:47 real time. The in-game time regularly used to time the speedruns is regrettably unknown for this specific run, but the Crystal Halberd route clearly saved significant time over the Pyromancy plus Drake Sword combo, though it still had one big issue. The Halberd could only be obtained in the second half of the run, and inferior weapons needed to be used for the early game bosses. A solution to this problem would come several months later, when a speedrunner named Tranquil further improved Thanatos' world record. He did this by utilizing the Black Knight weapons. These weapons drop from various Black Knights located around Lordran. However, their drops are not guaranteed, forcing the runners to continually reset runs until successfully obtaining the weapon. In the new record, Tranquil chose to go for the Black Knight sword, which drops from a Black Knight in Undeadburg, close to the Gold Pine resin. Drake Sword was skipped in this run, as the Black Knight sword would already be available for Quelaag, and then used for the rest of the run. That also meant the Undead Merchant didn't need to be visited, as killing Hellkite was meaningless, providing further time save. A faster drop down Blighttown sped up the descent. And the Quelaag fight ended up being quite a bit quicker with the new weapon of choice. The rest of the route was essentially the same, except for skipping the Lightning Spear in Sense Fortress and the Crystal Halberd in Analondo, of course. Tranquil also displayed confidence and did not derail his run through Kiln to pick up the Black Knight armor. After killing Gwyn, the in-game time displayed 26 minutes and 58 seconds, beating the standing record by nearly 3 minutes. The Black Knight sword is not commonly seen today and has never been a dominant weapon in Dark Souls speedrunning. The reason for that is the existence of a much stronger weapon, available just as early, the Black Knight Halberd. In his next record, Tranquil finally adapted the already used BKH strategies from any percent to the 4-squid category, and his next run resembled the modern ones much more. He started as a hunter, for the bow the class possesses right from the get-go. Finally, Oscar was not killed but talked to. Jump attack on Asylum Demon for extra damage was used, as the hitbox of the attack connects alongside the intended plunge, dealing tons of damage. And for the first time in 4-squid, the initial destination after leaving Asylum was not Undeadburg, but Valley of Drakes. This route also saw the first usage of the Red Tearstone Ring. The RTSR, for short, boosts damage significantly, while the player's health is under 20%, forcing the runners to perfectly avoid all attacks within a boss fight. The Spider Shield was also picked up, as its fire resistance helps with blocking Gwyn's attacks. Then, the Black Knight Halberd from Darkroot Basing was obtained, along with the Grass Crest Shield. Gargoyles were killed with the RTSR bonus using a battle axe purchased from Blacksmith Andre. Since this was old patch, Tranquil automatically received the Homeward Bone after ringing the bell, which was important for keeping his souls. After leveling up, the Halberd was used for Quelaag, but due to the routing, a pretty long run to Blightdown was necessary at first. Thanks to the Halberd's shape and moveset, it is possible to stunlock the boss, attacking her human part. This and the activated RTSR sped up the fight immensely. The rest of the run remained the same, except for the repeated usage of the ring for each boss encounter. Maintaining the health for RTSR puts incredible amounts of extra pressure on the runners. Deathless performances by them in world record runs became the norm, but now they also needed to avoid being hit during fights whatsoever, otherwise the run would be lost. This record of 25 minutes 11 seconds would stand unbeaten for the next year and a half. The primary reason for that being the PC release of Dark Souls in late 2012, and generally most of the runners migrating to it. As mentioned before, the Wrong Warp only worked on older console versions, and as such it became progressively more difficult to obtain, leading to decline in activity within the category. The seeds of turning this decline around were sown by a user named Kenny T in July 2014. In his Reddit post, he outlined how he managed to perform the Wrong Warp into Kiln on current patch using the Xbox Live Party feature. Indeed, it turned out that if playing online, attempting to join an Xbox party during a warp causes the warp to be corrupted in the same manner as the previously used glitch. This naturally sparked controversy, as the glitch was only available on Xbox. The run had to be done in online game mode, which meant paying for an Xbox Live Gold subscription. Relying on online features for speedruns can also be quite problematic, let's say.
What? What? Excuse me? Why didn't it sign me out? I don't want to show my password.
Nevertheless, online play was not banned at the time, and within the next couple of months, new challengers were coming for the 4-squid trophy. The first one, NaxHPL.
Yes, finally. Oh my god. That's why you don't give up. I'll survive here. Turns out you don't survive there. It honestly, like, is getting better every time I do it. Delicious. Oh!
Although it had been almost 1.5 years since Tranquil's record, the general outline of the route remained the same. However, it saw the first use of the now bread and butter glitch of Dark Souls speedrunning, the Moose Swap. Moose Swap allows the player to transfer part of one weapon's moveset to another. Nax picked up the S-Talk, from which he then transferred its running attack to the Black Knight Halberd for the ONS fight. S-Talk's running attack hits in 2 ticks, and when used on the BKH, effectively results in double damage and also double poise, which makes staggering Ornstein during phase 1 and Smo in phase 2 much simpler. Move swap combined with RTSR results in massive damage and saved Nax plenty of time in this fight. However, playing on current patch meant that ringing the upper bell no longer rewarded the player with a homeward bone, and Nax thus needed to buy one from Oswald at the bottom of the tower. Nax also saved time by using the Dark Sign to trigger a warp instead of the previous jump off the platform at Firelink Alta.
I have no idea what the in-game time is going to be. I doubt it's world record. I really doubt that it is. Oh my god, that's world record.
His new record with these optimizations stood at 25 minutes and 7 seconds. With the move swap available, the runners began to look for potential BKH alternatives, as the glitch made slow but heavy-hitting weapons viable contenders, and indeed, shortly after Nax's new record, a route utilizing the Black Knight Greatsword was created, upon the suggestion of pink and orange in gold. This route saved time by skipping the run through Valley of Drakes, since the BKG as Black Knight is located in Undeadburg. As such, no RTSR was picked up, which resulted in time losses during fights. Foursquid was already so short, however, and did not have too many boss fights, so using RTSR did not save enough time to offset for this new routing. Drakesword could also be used for the Gargoyles fight instead of a Battle Axe, and Move Swap Stagger Loop was used on Gwyn for the first time instead of repeated riposts. Nax managed to gradually improve his time all the way down to 23 minutes 41 seconds in-game time, including a double world record within a single day. A truly impressive progress in only a little over a month. There are still places where further improvements could be made. Nax did not have the fastest phase 1 of the ONS fight, and even failed to roll one of Smo's attacks. In the final stages of the run, he lost some time to a failed move swap attempt and bad menuing before the wrong warp. This would, however, be Nax's final Foursquid record, as a different runner was about to take center stage and dominate the category for years to come. The runner's name? CapitaineToinon.
Oh! Yeah! This is the best idea I ever had. Jump attack. And do the jump attack, of course! This is the worst! And do it a second time, of course! How am I? And a third time! How am I supposed to not yell? You're in the lava! And I died! What? How am I supposed to not yell at this game?
While Nax was enjoying his moments of glory, Capitaine steadily grinded away at Foursquid, closing in on Nax's time little by little with each personal best. His patience finally paid off when he improved the weaker points of Nax's run and finally picked up his first record on the 8th of June 2015.
That was way scarier than it needed to be. Holy fuck! Yes! What the fuck? How is it so good? Yes!
This record would also mark the last appearance of the Black Knight Greatsword in Foursquid's history, as just 12 days later, Capitaine used a completely new route to break the 23-minute barrier for the first time. This route revolved around the Great Club, and was routed by Fed981, who's primarily known for his Assassin's Creed speedruns, if you couldn't tell. Its beginning returned to Valley of Drakes and picking up the Red Tearstone ring, then proceeded towards the base in Black Knight, but instead of killing him, Capitaine rested at the bonfire and for the first time used an additional Foursquid wrong warp besides the one at the end of the run. You see, the original wrong warp on older patches had one big downside. It did not work in an area where the player's last bonfire was located. That was not the case for the Xbox Party version. This cave with the bonfire still counts as Valley of Drakes, and because the valley and New Londo ruins comprise one area, wrong warping from here puts the player to the bottom of the New Londo elevator. This enables them to quickly proceed to Blighttown, while also keeping the Darkwood base in bonfire, allowing for quick pathing towards Andre, the Gargoyles, and Sen's Fortress later in the run. As such, this route would be the first to ring the lower bell of awakening before ringing the upper one, and unfortunately suffered from needing to pick up 3 separate small soul items in order to level enough strength early on. In Blighttown, the Great Club was picked up, another weapon made viable primarily thanks to the move swap glitch. It gets outdamaged by the Greatsword, but since RTSR is picked up this time round, the effective damage is greater than the former route enjoyed. After killing Quelaag and ringing the bell, the second wrong warp of the run was performed, right after entering the Darkwood Basin area and picking up the Grass Crest Shield, which boosts players' stamina recovery and thus seemed like a logical option. The wrong warp puts the player closer to Undead Parish, saving valuable time over running on foot. Endurance was leveled up, as runners weren't used to playing in an overweight mid-roll state at this time and preferred the fast roll instead. Kapitein then upgraded the Great Cup to +5 and fought the Gargoyles, for now with the RTSR activated. The rest of the run remained similar as expected. Iron Golem was made to fall off, and thanks to the upgrade in damage, Ornstein now took only 2 hits to kill instead of 3, substantially reducing the randomness of the fight. After Kapitein performed the final wrong warp and killed Gwyn, his new time stood at 22 minutes 40 seconds, despite several minor time losses. It was clear that this route's potential laid much lower than that of the Black Knight Greatswords.
Fuck. Wow! I love this route.
Kapitein would keep on improving with every single day of this new route's practice over the next couple of months, and his record would reflect that.
The Swap 22 real dream is real.
For a short period of 4 days in August, he was actually bested by the runner Hackyu, but unfortunately the only remaining memory of this record is in a Reddit post by Kapitein himself, about him beating that record. The 22-minute barrier was overcome, but Kapitein was not done yet. It is quite common in the realms of speedrunning that the limits are not really where you think they are. Kapitein found this out on his own, as when aiming for a sub 2140 run, instead, he got this.
Oh my fucking god! Oh my fucking god! Oh my hands.
With this early Christmas gift, Kapitein decided to take a break from Foursquid and wouldn't come back for another 8 months. In the summer of 2016, he returned, refreshed and more dedicated than ever, looking to bring down the world record even further, and within the span of just 8 days, he managed to pull this off. How did he do it? Well, at this point there was not much massive optimizing to be had, but with such a short category, any minor improvement greatly helps with bringing the time down. Kapitein started using more in-game time friendly strategies, abusing the save and quit on the doors after Asylum Demon and before Guinevere. These quitouts both skip an animation, and as the in-game time does not run while outside of a save file, they end up saving time. The number of souls picked up in the early game also declined, and frame-perfect item duping was utilized instead. If a player uses a consumable, and then uses it again on the very last frame of its animation, the process is repeated, although the consumable should have already been depleted. This introduces further difficulty to the run, but saves valuable time. RTSR for Gargoyles was ditched, as the time spent setting it up was too much to outweigh the benefits on such a weak early game boss. Move swapping during instead of before the Iron Golem boss fight saved a further second. And of course, during his 8-month break, Kapitein was still competing in Dark Souls, just within different categories. Branching out within a singular game can drastically increase the rate at which players' skill improves. The seemingly last breakable minute barrier was now only steps away from collapsing. But things don't always go according to the plan. Before the sub 21 goal was achieved, a new discovery was made. A third version of the Foursquid Wrong Warp was accidentally discovered by the user Therapy Herb Guy. At first glance, nothing is peculiar about this screenshot, but notice this is the PC version of Dark Souls being played. Wrong warping was only supposed to work on Xbox or on older patches. It was quickly figured out that for this wrong warp to work, the game must be closed during a warp, similarly to the original wrong warp glitch, but it needs to happen within the last 4 frames of this loading screen. As we now know, it takes 5 frames for the game to store a position fully, so if this process is interrupted, the player's exact location is lost and a wrong warp is once again performed. Just like the wrong warp used on Xbox until now, it has no limitations regarding areas where it may be performed. Due to the nature of this iteration, it finally works on any version of the game, including the PC release.
I did it. What?
Wait, you got it? Nice.
What the fuck? Okay, so it's not a DS Fix thing. Holy shit.
Wait, what the fuck?
Wait, without DS Fix?
Without DS Fix.
Although it introduces more difficulty to the glitch's execution, running on PC has several advantages. It provides the runners with an easy way of practice through save files and multiple other practice tools. The load times on PC are faster, and although the in-game time does not tick during regular loading screens, it still provides several seconds of time save over console due to cutscenes loading quicker, resulting in shorter black screens. The in-game time can be tracked within a splitting tool, allowing the runners to see the pace their run is on at any moment, not just during quitouts like on console. PC speedrunning is also much easier to capture and record, making it not only more accessible for everyone, but will often mean a better quality recording of a world record, improving its presentation to the general audience. No one wants to watch a phone recording of a TV screen. The new wrong warp also doesn't require players to be online, completely nullifying the need to pay for an Xbox Live Gold subscription, and works on the PlayStation as well, allowing every platform to compete. It is then quite clear that the positives of this new wrong warp are above and beyond the negatives it carries. It didn't take long, and Kapitein was back to work, achieving the sub 21. The route was not changing at this point, and most of these improvements came from better execution and getting more favorable patterns on boss fights and in other places of the run.
Sub fucking 21!
An exception to the rule, however, was a new strategy that would see the runners killing Gwyn with a riposte instead of a regular running attack. This makes him die instantly instead of forcing the runner to wait out a long death animation. The riposte can then be combined with a well-timed save and quit, just as the boss dies. At that point, the boss is already dead, but the game still considers his arena as unstable ground and will transport the runner to their last stored location, just outside of the fog wall where, at this point, the trigger for the Dark Lord ending is already active. This strategy saves several seconds, but relies on getting a slow attack from Gwyn at the end of the fight, which has a mere 30% chance of happening. If the runner gets a fast attack, they do not have enough health to survive blocking it, and lose the run instead, right there at the very end. The first to play this roulette was a runner called Siegewell.
I need to do the Gwyn YOLO.
Oh my god, I need to do it. It won't be good enough. I lost too much time in the honest segments. Just too much. Oh my god, that was so close. He did it. He did a good attack and I didn't die with the YOLO. Like, I would have died with the fast attack. This is it. Just by 1 second. Like, not even a second, just barely.
In classic Dark Souls fashion, Siege was not happy with his run.
Like, this run is so bad. Like, the start was good, but then, like, but still, whatever. It's wrecky, I guess.
Kapitein managed to fight back in early 2017 using the Gwyn YOLO. But let's just say he wasn't too excited either.
Fuck's sake, dude. It's so bad, dude. It's so bad. I'm not done. I said I would be done. If I said like I would be happy with 2045, but I'm not happy. I want a 2030 something. I want a 2030.
Despite his obvious irritation, Kapitein would have to wait for his 2030. This record would go on to be the longest standing 4-squid world record in history, running from March 2017 all the way to October 2019, across 947 days. And what happened in 2019? Well, Kapitein came back, again. The game saw great development since Kapitein's last record. For example, the All-Boss's world record went down from 1 hour 10 minutes to 1 hour 5 minutes within this time span. Weapon toggling was discovered to make the acceleration to top running speed slightly faster, making runners switch weapons throughout the entire run. It might add up to saving 1 or 2 seconds over the course of the run. Endurance was no longer leveled as mid-rolling became the norm within other categories by now, and subsequent extra strength safe attacks on Smo, Gwyn, and potentially Quelaag as well. There was a new wrong warp utilized for skipping a short running section before Sen's Fortress, and with it came a more optimized cycle of the pendulums within it. It had been discovered that you can simply roll and toggle out of the firebomb blocking your path after killing Iron Golem instead of waiting it out. Kapitein also now move swapped inside Gwyn's fight instead of before it, saving another valuable second. Though it risked breaking the boss's AI, as Dark Souls has some quality programming. The biggest change of all, however, was the introduction of fall damage cancels, or plunges for short. If a player performs a plunge attack on a sloped surface, they are put into a special state out of which rolling is possible. If timed correctly, the invincibility frames from the roll can be used to negate incoming fall damage. But the water wheel still needed to be used for setting up RTSR. In 4-squid, this made the descent through Blighttown quite a bit quicker and allowed Kapitein to obliterate his old record with only his first finished run.
RIP the 2.5 years world record. Gotta get a coffee.
The run was far from optimal, and thus the hunt for perfection began. If you think Kapitein was the only challenger, you're wrong. Instead, it was Gandrake HD who introduced a new strategy into the run. He further sped up the descent through Blighttown by adding a second plunge, turning the already big time save into a massive one. He then set up the RTSR using a sloping Quelaag's domain as replacement for the water wheel, which with practice became the standard for other runners as well. Making less mistakes, like performing the wrong warp in front of Sen's Fortress first try, he got to test his luck on Gwyn doing the slow attack.
World record, baby!
The splits nevertheless suggested that the perfection was still far from being reached. And so, on January 7th, 2020, Kapitein started his own journey. A journey which would span over the entire year and whose destination couldn't have been predicted even by Kapitein himself.
Fuck this game.
At this point, it was painstakingly clear that there would be no quitting until the 20-minute barrier fell. Last time one was broken was over 4 years ago, all the way back in 2016, with the first forced quit record achieved on PC. In order to accomplish this incredibly difficult task, Kapitein added the smallest and riskiest optimizations possible, in turn inflating his reset counter to sky-high levels. Quitting out to break Oscar's wall and then backstepping through the boulder saved less than a second. Through menu shenanigans, doing bench skip, a tedious small jump abusing collision, was possible immediately after entering Firelink, saving further 2.5 seconds. Cap now relied on getting a double frame perfect soul dupe, and it turned out that skipping the grass crash shield actually saved 3 seconds over picking it up, but in turn made the Sense Fortress cycles more difficult to manage. Even through 20 minutes of perfect gameplay and the luckiest RNG in Dark Souls, the run is never over until the final credits roll. Kapitein's adventure was closing in on its final destination, but it would take a fantastic run to shave off 5 more seconds. Nevertheless, if anyone was going to do it, it had to be him. And on the 5th of January 2021, he did this.
fuck is this run?
With the run of his life on the line, it all came down to the final 30% gamble.
Oh my fucking god. Jesus fucking Christ! Oh my god! Oh my... Shit. What the fuck, bro? 1949! Holy shit! Oh my fuck! Are you real? Oh my... Sub 20 gets fucking annihilated! Holy shit, dude! I've been running this game for 6 years now. This is the best run I've ever done. Holy fucking... This is insane!
It is said that the house always wins, but on this day, on this run, Kapitein defied the odds and broke the sub 20 with authority. This is where the journey's last chapter ends, not just for Kapitein, but for all of the dedicated runners who worked tirelessly to improve times and incorporate new strategies within the any percent force width category. From the early pyromancy runs of Twilight on Old Patch, to Thanatos' shift to the Crystal Halberd, to the first use of Black Knight weapons and initial runs on Xbox by Nax, all the way to the modern Great Club routes and Kapitein's 6 years of dominance through 20 individual records. But in speedrunning, when one story ends, another one is already looming in the shadows. Who's going to be its next rider? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to give the video a like if you really enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this.